Let's dive in. We have to start with something that sounds, well, almost unbelievable. An incredible achievement, really.
It is astonishing, yeah. We're talking about China's clean energy target.
Exactly. But, and this is the huge but, there's a massive catch, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. A giant asterisk. Because while we talk about this green surge, China is still, by far, the world's biggest polluter.
Right. So let's set the scene first. Back in 2020, President Xi Jinping lays out this goal: 1,200 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030. A huge target for a decade away.
Huge target. And, well, they didn't just meet it, they smashed it.
How quickly?
Get this. July 2024. They hit 1,206 gigawatts.
Wow.
6 years ahead of schedule. 6 years.
That's incredible. Just to give people a sense of that scale, 1,200 gigawatts is like,
Oh.
what?
It's roughly the entire generating capacity of Japan and Germany put together,
Oh.
all of it.
Okay. And the pace they're adding this stuff.
It's just off the charts, unparalleled, really. This year alone, they're expected to add something like 70 gigawatts of wind and maybe 190 gigawatts of solar.
So, no question, they are leading the world in building the green future infrastructure.
Yeah, building it, yes. But here's where that paradox just slaps you in the face.
Right.
Despite all this capacity, all this world-leading green tech, China is still the #1 polluter. And, I mean, it's not even close.
Give us those numbers again. They're crucial for understanding this whole thing.
Okay, so the latest figures, this is from the Energy Institute's 2024 review. China released a record 11.2 billion tons of CO2 in 2023.
Billion. With a B.
With a B. And that was up 642 million tons from the year before, that jump. It's the biggest annual increase they've had since 2011.
Okay, and how does that stack up against, say, the U.S.?
Well, the U.S. number for 2023 was about 4.64 billion tons, which, interestingly, was actually one of our lower figures recently.
So China's emitting more than double the U.S.?
More than double, yeah. So you have the situation, global champion of green capacity, and at the same time, global champion of pollution.
Genuinely mind-bending. Okay, so that's our mission today, right? To unpack this massive conflict. How can the country winning the renewable build-out race also be driving global emissions up?
It really boils down to this clash between, let's say, central ambition and the messy reality of their internal energy system.
Let's just underline that scale again for a second. The construction numbers are wild. You mentioned 2022.
Right. In 2022, China installed almost as much solar power as the rest of the entire world combined.
Just staggering.
And then in 2023, they doubled down. They literally doubled their new solar installations compared to the year before.
And not just solar, right? Energy storage, too.
Yeah, energy storage capacity additions nearly quadrupled in that same year. I mean, the shift is real. Fossil fuels are now less than half of China's total installed generating capacity.
Less than half. What was it before?
Just a decade ago, it was something like 2/3 fossils.
So that's a fundamental infrastructure change.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, this wasn't just market forces. This was deliberate policy.
Absolutely. Strategic decisions going back to the mid-2000s. The goal was clear. Position China as the world's go-to supplier for green technology.
Corner the market, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. And they've largely succeeded. They now control over 80% of the global solar manufacturing capacity, the whole supply chain, really.
From mining the rare earths and minerals.
All the way to assembling the final panels, they dominate it.
And, look, there's been a side effect, a positive one globally, this massive scale. It's pushed down the price of renewables for everyone.
Definitely. Cheap solar panels worldwide are, in part, thanks to this Chinese industrial push. Everyone kind of benefits from that aspect.
Okay, so they're building the tools for the global transition. But let's swing back to the pollution inside China. Because the spending is huge, but the actual generation, that's different.
That's the critical point. All that solar and wind capacity. In 2024, it generated only about 14% of China's actual electricity use.
Only 14%.
Yep.
With all that capacity.
Yep. 14%.
That's the gap. That's the core of the paradox right there. They can make the clean power, they have the machines, but they're not using them to their full potential. Why?
Well, it's that crucial difference between installed capacity, what you could generate, and actual generation, what the grid takes. And, China, the U.S., and India together were responsible for over half, about 53% of all global energy pollution last year.
Why? Just demand.
Immense energy demand growth in China, mostly. And that demand is still overwhelmingly being met by the old guard, by coal.
Which leads us straight into this concept researchers are talking about, It's not an energy transition, it's energy addition.
Exactly. That's the heart of the problem. The idea, the principle, was supposed to be established before breaking. You build up the renewables, get them solid, then you phase down the fossil fuels.
Makes sense.
But what's actually happening is, well, they're just adding the clean energy on top. It's being layered over an existing and actually growing reliance on coal.
So wait, instead of replacing old coal plants, the new solar and wind is competing against new coal plants.
You got it. Every gigawatt of new solar is fighting for grid space, not just with old coal, but with brand new, freshly built coal capacity.
That sounds counterproductive.
It's deeply problematic. And the numbers on new coal construction are, frankly, pretty alarming, despite all the pledges about controlling coal.
What are the numbers?
In 2024, construction started on 94.5 gigawatts of new coal-fired power capacity.
94.5
Hmm.
gigawatts of new coal
Mhm.
starting construction now.
Yep, that's the highest level of new coal starts since 2015.
So they're setting records for solar installations and simultaneously starting the most new coal plants in almost a decade? That feels like a deliberate contradiction.
It certainly looks that way, and here's a statistic that really puts it in perspective. China now accounts for 93% of all global construction starts for coal power this year.
93%. So the rest of the world's new coal is basically insignificant compared to China's.
It's almost a rounding error. China is continuing this massive investment in coal, while the rest of the world is generally moving away from it.
That single statistic tells you so much about the climate challenge right now.
Okay, so why? Why does coal still have this iron grip, especially when renewables are getting cheaper? It sounds like the system is somehow rigged.
It is. The sources point to basically 4 big systemic reasons why coal keeps winning, even when cheap solar is sitting right there.
All right, let's break them down. What's number one?
First up, grid preference. China's enormous power grid. Well, it prefers the steady, predictable power you get from a coal plant.
Like, it's easier to manage.
Exactly. Think of the grid operator, like, I don't know, a nervous air traffic controller. They trust the big, reliable, maybe dirty Boeing 747. That's the coal plant. It always lands when scheduled.
Okay.
The renewables, the solar and wind, they're like the flashy, high-tech fighter jets. Super capable, but their flight plan depends entirely on the weather. So when the grid is stressed, the operator plays it safe. They give priority, more operating hours to the predictable coal plants.
Stability over cleanliness, especially with massive industrial demand. Got it. What's the second reason? Second, energy security. This is a big one in Beijing. You've got geopolitical tensions always simmering. Plus, they had those severe droughts recently, right? That hammered their hydropower output in 2022, 2023.
Right, I remember that.
So events like that just reinforce this deep-seated view that real energy security, the ultimate backup, still means coal. It's seen as the insurance policy. They'll compromise on climate goals to keep the lights on and the factories running.
So they keep building coal, not just for everyday use, but as a backup for those times when the sun isn't shining or the rivers are low.
That's a big part of it, yeah. That's insurance. Third reason is more economic. Long-term contracts. These power purchase agreements, or PPAs.
Ah, the PPAs. How do they lock things in?
Well, the big electricity buyers, the utility companies, they're often locked into these long multi-year contracts to buy power from specific coal plants. So imagine your local utility has a 20-year contract for like an old, expensive cell phone plan. Even if someone offers them a brand new, free smartphone that's the cheap solar power, they still have to pay huge penalties if they don't fulfill their contract for the old, expensive plan.
So they're basically forced to buy the dirty power, even if clean power is available and cheaper, just to avoid breaking an old contract.
Pretty much. It actively crowds out the renewables. It's a major market inefficiency, directly undermining all that investment in green tech.
That's kind of shocking. What's the fourth reason?
Fourth is financing influence. This tells you who's pushing for all this new coal construction.
Okay.
Over 3/4, more than 75% of the new coal capacity approved in 2024. It was backed financially by coal mining companies or groups that already have big mining operations.
Ah, so the companies digging the coal out of the ground are also financing the new plants to burn it.
Exactly. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. They're essentially investing to guarantee future demand for their own product, for their mines. It doesn't matter if market forces or even central government climate targets point the other way.
It really paints a picture of internal conflict, doesn't it? Central government pushing green, but local finance and old infrastructure pushing back hard with coal.
That's a very good way to put it. Intense internal conflict.
Okay, before we get to the potential fix for all this, We need to talk about one area where China has made huge progress, because it's not all bad news on pollution.
That's right. It's crucial to distinguish between climate emissions, the CO2, and local air quality.
Mm.
Remember that war against pollution China declared back in 2014?
Yeah, targeting that smog, the particulate matter, PM 2.5.
Exactly. The stuff you can actually see and breathe, the stuff that was causing major public health crises in cities, and that war, it's actually been a measurable success.
How much success?
The data shows PM 2.5 levels nationally dropped by a really significant 42% compared to 2013 levels.
Wow, 42%, that's huge. What does that mean for people's health?
It translates, according to estimates, to the average Chinese citizen gaining about 2.2 years of life expectancy.
2.2 years longer life just from cleaning up the particulates.
Yeah. And interestingly, sources say that a noticeable drop in global average particulate pollution levels is directly linked to China's success here.
Okay, so they tackled the particulates because it was an immediate, visible, local health threat. People choking on smog in Beijing. But the CO2 emissions keep rising because, well, climate change feels more distant, less immediate, maybe. It doesn't choke you today in the same way.
That seems to be the key distinction, yes. The political will was there, forcefully, to fix the visible air quality crisis. But we should add, even with that progress, China is still, I think, the 13th most polluted country for particulates. Still, and something like 99.9% of its population lives in areas where air quality still exceeds WHO guidelines. So the challenge remains huge, but they did show they can act decisively when the threat is perceived as direct and urgent.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. You have, on one hand, the world leader in building green infrastructure. On the other, a system locking in fossil fuels through these economic and grid mechanisms we talked about. How does this potentially change? What's the proposed way out of this paradox?
Well, a lot of hope is being pinned on fixing the infrastructure itself. Remember how we said the grid favors coal? Part of that is because China's power grid isn't really one national grid. It operates more like 6 separate regional grids.
Balkanized, you called it.
Yeah, basically. So the massive solar power generated way out in the western deserts often struggles to get efficiently transmitted to the big cities and industrial hubs in the east where the demand is. Coal plants near the cities fill the gap.
So the fix is basically to connect everything up properly.
That's the idea. There's a major push to create a truly unified national power market by 2030, merge those 6 regional grids into one integrated system.
And the goal is?
Better management of supply and demand across the whole country. Make it easier to move that clean power from where it's generated to where it's needed.
Which, in theory, should undermine the need for all those local coal plants, right?
Right.
If the grid operator in Shanghai can easily and reliably pull cheap solar power from Xinjiang province, why keep the expensive, dirty local coal plant running as much?
That's the theory. That's the hope. It should force coal into more of a backup role rather than the primary role it often plays now.
So will market reform, this grid unification, finally be enough to overcome those 4 big forces propping up coal? The grid preference, the security concerns, the PPAs, the financing.
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? It's going to be a huge test. Central market logic versus entrenched regional interests and the power of the coal industry.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean for you listening? Well, China has clearly won the race to dominate global renewable technology, manufacturing, scale, price. They're number one. But the internal fight, the political and infrastructural battle to actually use that technology effectively at home, that's the next massive hurdle.
It may be the hardest one.
And the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. How can one country simultaneously be the world's green energy manufacturing powerhouse and its biggest climate polluter? It's a paradox that defines the entire global climate struggle right now.
Yeah, so next time you read about another giant solar farm opening in China, just remember that somewhere else, they might be starting construction on 94 gigawatts of new coal. That contradiction is the reality we're dealing with.
A complex and frankly conflicted picture. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into China's energy paradox.
Thanks for having me.
If you found this useful or interesting, please do follow the channel. That way you won't miss our next exploration into the complex issues shaping our world.